The story you're about to hear was never meant to survive the war. During World War II, fertilizer was not just scarce, it was strategically unavailable. Nitrogen plants had been converted to explosives. Imports were disrupted. Farmers and home gardeners across Britain were told plainly, there would be no fertilizer, not this year, not next year, and possibly never again. The assumption was that yields would collapse. They didn't. What happened instead was something far more dangerous to post-war industry. Ordinary civilians rediscovered a biological system so effective that entire communities stopped buying fertilizer altogether. One, planting permanent fertility. Soil that improved every year instead of degrading. And when the war ended, that knowledge vanished almost overnight. This video exists because the documentation survived quietly in wartime surveys, agricultural journals, and private records never meant to be rediscovered. What follows is not theory, not modern reinvention, and not nostalgia. It is a documented wartime practice that worked so well it had to be erased. So, how did white clover become the backbone of Britain's victory gardens? Well, in early 1942, British agricultural advisors started recommending an old practice, one that actually predates chemical agriculture entirely, undersowing food crops with white clover. Trifolium repens wasn't exotic, not in the slightest. And it certainly wasn't rare either. It had been used for centuries in rotational farming, but over time folks gradually abandoned it once synthetic nitrogen became cheap and, well, profitable. Now, white clover doesn't improve soil in some abstract way. It actually manufactures nitrogen continuously. Its roots host rhizobium bacteria that pull nitrogen gas directly from the atmosphere and convert it into plant-available compounds. This happens day and night without any inputs, fuel or labour needed. Wartime measurements? Recorded fixation rates equivalent to 150 to 300 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year. That figure matters because, well, most vegetable plots require less than half of that annually. In other words, a mature stand of clover produced more nitrogen than the crops above it could use. The excess just accumulated in the soil. Gardeners noticed the results before scientists finished documenting them. Crops darkened in colour. Leaf growth stabilized instead of surging and collapsing. Yields increased year over year instead of declining. And critically, these gains persisted without fertilizer reapplication. Why this plant was different from every input-based solution? Chemical fertilizer delivers nitrogen in a single pulse. Much of it volatilizes, washes away, or, burns roots. White clover releases nitrogen gradually, synchronized to plant growth cycles. As roots die back and regrow, nitrogen enters the soil steadily rather than destructively. Equally important, clover improves soil structure. Its roots create channels that increase oxygen penetration and water infiltration. Earthworm populations increase because organic matter rises. Weed pressure declines because bare soil disappears. Moisture retention improves without irrigation. This was not a one-season fix. White clover is perennial. Once established, it returns every spring without replanting. Wartime records tracked gardens over multiple years and found nitrogen levels rising annually. Productivity increased even as external inputs remained unavailable. From an industrial perspective, this was a problem. What happened when the war ended and fertilizer returned? By 1946, chemical fertilizer production resumed at industrial scale. The factories that had produced explosives now produced ammonium nitrate. An entire economic system required recurring purchases to function. White clover made that impossible. Extension offices quietly stopped teaching biological nitrogen fixation. Seed catalogues removed clover listings intended for gardens. Post-war gardening manuals omitted practices that had sustained millions just months earlier. The technique was not challenged. It was ignored. Research funding shifted away from biological systems. Wartime studies demonstrating clover's superiority over chemical fertilizer in long-term soil health were no longer cited. The knowledge was not destroyed. It was made invisible. A dependency economy replaced a regenerative one. How this knowledge can still be applied exactly as it was in the Second World War. Nothing about white clover has changed. For gardens, the wartime method remains effective, you know. Seeds are broadcast directly onto the soil between crop rows in early spring. They are not buried, just scattered on top. Light and moisture will trigger germination within about 2 weeks. During the first year, clover is allowed to establish itself without any aggressive cutting. By year 2, nitrogen fixation reaches full capacity. Vegetables are planted directly into the clover, which is quite handy. If growth becomes too dense, the clover is trimmed, but never removed. The roots remain alive and continue fixing nitrogen. Cuttings are left right there in place as mulch. Within 3 seasons, soil nitrogen stabilizes at levels that, well, eliminate fertilizer entirely. For lawns, clover is overseeded into existing grass. As it spreads, fertilizer applications stop. Water requirements decrease, and clover remains green during drought. Nitrogen feeds the grass automatically. This is not experimental. This is replication. So, why did the erasure matter? And well, why does it still matter today? A plant that fertilizes forever, you see, it undermines every recurring input business model out there. It just can't be monetized at scale. It resists dependency, plain and simple, and it turns consumers into producers. That's exactly why it disappeared from instruction, not because it failed, but honestly because it succeeded a bit too well. White clover still grows wild today, you know. It's sprayed as a weed, then replaced with synthetic nitrogen. A perfect loop of manufactured dependency. The war proved another way was possible, didn't it? And well, the records prove it worked. If this knowledge matters to you, then preserve it, share it, apply it, and subscribe to the Wartime Frontlines for documented survival history that systems tried to bury. Not myths, just repackaged for clicks. This channel exists to keep real knowledge alive and, you know, in circulation.